do a subject credential. So I had to take exams to get that, which I sort of passed on the way. And then there was this, then I realized to be an administrator, you could take this preliminary admin exam. And there, like all of these things, there are so many prep courses and so on that you can take. Mm-hmm. And I had a look at the sort of questions they asked you, and I thought, well, bugger it, I know the answers to those. So I just applied and took it without any prep or whatever, and I passed it. So I got this preliminary admin credential test, which I assumed would be good enough to get an admin job. So I remember I rang up LA Unified School District about an admin job that was going on, and they said, oh, well, you need 5 years experience and teaching experience. And I said, well, it's fine. I've got about 40. Is that okay? And they're saying, no, well, it's got to be here. Oh. So it's the sort of, and as I said earlier, I don't know if that's a California thing or a USA thing, but it's like if you didn't do it here, it didn't count. Mm-hmm. So I ended up feeling like I'd flown in from Botswana with some sort of, non-existent qualification that didn't mean anything. I've got 40 years experience. I'd been 20 years an administrator, and none of that counted for a thing. And I was very surprised. So that was a bit of a setback, really. But anyway, the long story short, in the end, I got a teaching job, and that was great. And I was going to get it. And then also, as it happened, the rules kept changing. So firstly, my credential was, all I had to do was teach for 3 years in California, and then I could apply for an admin credential. While I was waiting for that to happen, the rules changed. It became 5 years. And then while I was waiting for the 5th year, the rule changed again, and the original credential I'd got didn't count, and I had to do another one. And by that time, I'm getting quite ancient because I'm not young, and it became not worth it to me to go through all those hoops and do it. So in the end, I didn't bother trying to get an admin credential and being an administrator. But I would have loved to have been one. It was the most rewarding thing that I'd done. Being an administrator here was being a college principal was brilliant here. It was like I say college because that's another thing. One of the things I knew about it, but I didn't know the extent to which it is that the same word means different things, or it has different nuances in there and here. So like there you talk about college, it almost usually means university. Here, university means university, and college means something interim between school and university, like a junior college, right? So
gotcha. Okay, because I was going to clarify that, because I guarantee you most people listening to this they'll be like, well, college. So he's a college professor, but then we're gonna, you ended up teaching at Oaks Christian, right?
Oak Park High School.
Park.
No, I
Oak
wasn't.
Park.
It wasn't independent.
Gotcha.
It was a public funded school.
Gotcha. Okay.
And that's another story. But the interesting thing. So college, there meant. So the college I was a principal of was very much like a small community college.
Gotcha.
So we had about 1,000 students aged 16 to 19, which is like the end of high school in England.
Yeah.
And we had about 5,000 or more part-time adult students who were doing a range of things like they would do in the community college. They would be doing things like getting their redoing and getting a high school credential if they'd never got one, or getting some bridging program to get them from where they had been to be acceptable to a university course.
Gotcha.
Or they'd be doing associate degrees, or they'd be doing courses for their own enrichment. Like, the big joke was sort of something like, you do underwater basket weaving or whatever it was, It's those things.
Gotcha.
So we had that whole range of stuff going on. But it's just on a smaller scale. But I was principal of that sort of place. So not a college of higher education.
Gotcha.
In England, they call them a college of further education. Or in fact, the one I was at is called a sixth form college, because the last 2 years of school age in England are called the sixth form. You were in the sixth form. So it's like
Gotcha.
year 12 and 11. 12 and 13, something like that. It's a bit different. And all the way, I mean, it was lucky that I'd been coming to the States since the 80s, because at least I was vaguely familiar with where the United States and England are similar and where they differ.
Right.
And they're very, very similar, but on some things they're very, very different. Well, and the educational structure and educational policy are very, very different.
Well, you made one point about you're not sure if it's a state issue or just an industry issue or a countrywide issue about coming in and not having experience be honored and having to redo that just basically a policy issue, right? And but I experienced that a lot because I'm a doctor of Chinese medicine, and so I went to Oriental Medicine University, for my master's and my doctorate. I went to Villanova for my standard university education in Philadelphia, but that was not for medicine. That was for engineering. And people who don't understand Oriental medicine schooling in the United States think that perhaps it's somewhat of a joke. And it's couldn't be further from the truth, because a lot of my professors were people, they're from China or from Korea or from Japan that came over here and they were, heads of cardiology departments, or like extremely, extremely expert level, well-credentialed doctors from their countries. But it didn't count here. And they were older at the time. They came over to live with their kids or something like that, and they were basically retirement age, but they didn't want to stop working. So they became professors at Oriental medicine schools because to go through what they needed to do, they also needed to learn the Eastern side of the medicine, because most of the medical institutions there are such that you can walk in and choose Eastern or Western, but everything is done with an integrative approach. You might go in for an EKG and then be given Chinese herbs on your way out and that kind of thing. So I end up getting the pedigree of my teachers was astoundingly good, especially for the price, because it's a lot cheaper than Western medical school. But yeah, I just that's the only experience I have that makes me feel like that's related,
I think you're right. I absolutely think you're right. And I've encountered people from the Philippines who have been fully trained as medical people who come over to the States, and it counts for bugger all. Whereas, in England, it's quite interesting. As a principal, I had the ability to accept somebody's credentials. I could look at their credentials and I could make a decision. I could say, you're from the state. I did employ people from the United States, funnily enough. And I could say, well, I look at what you've done and what you've got, and that seems okay to me. And let's give it a go and I'll employ you. I didn't make people go through a million hoops to get their credentials transferred, to get their degree transcript transferred and related to my own system. If I thought they were okay to employ and I felt they'd got the adequate qualifications, I had the authority to do that.
I would subscribe to that far more readily. I trust the expertise of the person there.
Well, my feeling was that, it used to be like that in the US, and that too many people had made too many bad decisions and it got taken away and bureaucratized. I don't know if that's right. That was how it felt. I don't know whether that was right or wrong.
I could see. I mean, that seems like a proper hypothesis, but I don't know. No. I mean, that usually seems to be the way to go. I mean, Jesus, I got little kids, and you say, all right, I'll trust you to do this, and then they break the trust too many times. I'm like, now I have to go check and see if you cleaned your room. You told me.
Right, exactly.
Right.
No, it is that sort of thing. You're right. That's exactly what it is.
Well, the reason why I brought it up, and it's not to toot my own horn or anything like that, but the reason why I asked the question, and we got to get back to it, about why the 9 years allowed you to get ingrained the way you did, is because I think it takes one to know one, and I toured a lot as a musician. I've had a lot of experiences that taught me how to make friends quickly, and to build relationships or at least find common ground fast with people so that you can build rapport, at least deeply go down one rabbit's hole to have something to hold on to, so that the next time I came around that city, I'm like, hey, you and me, we both like, football or something like that, and we got something to talk about. But yeah, so tell me about getting into school and finding. Let's keep going on this topic. This is good.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, I think being a teacher helps because it means that if you're an educator, you are used to dealing with people. And you're good. If you're a reasonable educator, then you're a communicator. You're somewhat of an actor. If you're in front of a class, you're an actor. Don't tell me you're not, because teachers are actors. And the other thing for me, actually, which helped me settle into Ventura quite quickly, was getting into the poetry group, was getting into the regular poetry readings in Ventura Library. That happened quite quickly, and we met some people. And I would go down there with a mate of mine every Thursday, and I did that quite soon. I mean, within a couple of years, I guess, of being there. So that helped me have a group of American people with a shared interest. Being a teacher, I got the job fairly quick. Well, firstly, when I arrived, and I realized it wasn't going to be quite as easy as I'd thought to get either a teaching job or an admin job, I'm faced with the idea, crikey, this could get quite difficult quite quickly if I don't get a job. And about the only thing I could do was drive, because I had a driver's license. So I drove for Roadrunner for 18 months, Roadrunner shuttle. Yeah. So I drove vans to and from shared vans to and from the airport, and then eventually I drove limos for 18 months, and that was a bloody nightmare. I mean, you got paid bugger all, you got no... you didn't get medical or any benefits. You had no benefits. You just got basic wages and tips. So, I mean, that was quite interesting, and that got you to a position where you had to either talk to people or you drove in a silent van. So I got to the airport. There were times I got to the airport, and we'd had such a good time. People would go, like, mate, don't drop me off right now. Let's go round again. We're having such a good time in the van, chatting and talking. Let's go round again. No, I don't want to get off yet, I mean, that was quite funny. And then another time, other times there were people... I picked up a guy from UCSB, because I have a chemistry degree. My undergraduate degree is chemistry, and I trained to teach math, and I ended up teaching math, physics, and chemistry. That's a long story. That's another story. I'll tell you about that later if you want to know, but you may not. But I was talking to this guy. I picked him up, Prof. And he was, we're driving along the road. You can imagine, I don't have many people in the van from Santa Barbara, so it was just him and me. And I'm like, what have you been doing? Oh, I've been visiting in Santa Barbara to do a lecture to the chemistry department. I said, well, what have you been lecturing? And he said, it's about fluorine chemistry. So one of my tutors at university was a bigwig. He was huge in fluorine chemistry. So he and I then ended up driving from Santa Barbara to, I don't know, wherever the next pickup was in Thousand Oaks. We were just talking about fluorine chemistry. When he got off the van, he said, blimey, he said, I can tell you, I never really expected to have that sort of conversation with my driver on the way to the airport. So that was quite funny. But all I'm saying is that, you've got to be sort of fairly gregarious and chatty, otherwise you're not going to get anywhere. So absolutely, but what I'm saying is also it's not about me really. It's just that I was fortunate to meet lots of people who helped me feel at home being where I was, and therefore I felt at home very quickly, and that was true in school. I was really, really blessed, amazingly blessed, to get the job I got at Oak Park High School, one of the best high schools in California. with a fantastic group of people on the staff.